Stop what you are doing. Because what is happening right now inside the Cleveland Browns organization is the kind of story that does not stay quiet. It does not stay in the locker room. It does not stay in the front office. It explodes. And that is exactly what is happening. A decision, one single decision about who starts at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns has set off a debate so loud, so intense, so deeply personal for so many people that it has taken over sports radio, dominated social media timelines, and forced everyone in the NFL world to pick a side. And right in the middle of it all is a name that a lot of people are still getting to know, but after this, nobody will forget. Dillon Gabriel. Remember that name, because everything is about to change. To truly understand why the Dillon Gabriel situation in Cleveland has become what it has become, you need to understand the Cleveland Browns. Not just the team as it exists today, but the history, the pain, the decades of near misses and heartbreaks and false dawns that have shaped the identity of this franchise and the people who bleed for it. Because in Cleveland, the quarterback position is not just a football decision. It is an emotional one. It is a cultural one. It carries the weight of everything this city has been through. And when someone new arrives at that position, when a new name enters the conversation, it is never just about football. It is always about something more. The Cleveland Browns have been searching for a franchise quarterback for longer than most NFL fans care to remember. The list of quarterbacks who were supposed to be the answer, who came in with hope and left with disappointment, is long and painful. Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Brandon Weeden, Johnny Manziel, Deshaun Kaiser, Baker Mayfield, who came closest to feeling like something real before the relationship fell apart in one of the most public and messy divorces between a franchise and a quarterback in recent NFL history. And then Deshaun Watson. The trade that cost the Browns an extraordinary amount of draft capital, the contract that guaranteed more money than any quarterback deal in league history at the time, and then the injury, the suspension, the missed seasons, the sense that the window had been slammed shut before it ever truly opened. Cleveland Browns fans have been through it all. They have seen every version of hope and every version of devastation. And so when a new quarterback enters this conversation, when the debate about who starts begins, it lands differently in Cleveland than it would anywhere else. Dillon Gabriel arrived in the 2025 NFL Draft as one of the most accomplished quarterbacks in college football history. Let that sink in for a moment, because it is a statement that deserves to be taken seriously. His statistics at the college level were not merely impressive, they were historically significant. Gabriel played college football for multiple seasons across different programs, and what he built over that time was a resume that most quarterbacks in the history of the sport cannot match. Touchdown numbers, completion percentages, yards, efficiency metrics. By the time his college career was finished, Dillon Gabriel had cemented himself as someone who had done more with a football in the collegiate setting than almost anyone who had come before him. But the NFL Draft is not the college football record books, and the NFL Draft has a way of reducing even the most decorated college careers to a set of measurables, height, weight, arm strength, 40 time, hand size, that sometimes feel completely disconnected from the actual question of whether a player can play football. Gabriel entered the draft process knowing that he would face questions. He is not the prototypical size that NFL teams historically prefer at quarterback. He does not have the rocket arm that makes scouts write breathless reports. What he has, and what anyone who watched him closely in college could not deny, is the ability to process, to make decisions, to move an offense, to win football games. He has the thing that is hardest to measure and most important to have. And yet, the draft is the draft, and the draft has its own logic. The Cleveland Browns, heading into the 2025 NFL Draft, were in a position that required them to make a serious decision about their quarterback future. The Deshaun Watson situation had left scars, financial, competitive, emotional.
The roster had talent in other areas. The coaching staff had ideas about what they wanted their offense to look like, and the front office, led by people who had staked their professional reputations on this franchise turning a corner, needed to show the fan base and the ownership group that they had a real plan. Drafting a quarterback.
But the debate that really ignited, the one that has taken over the conversation and turned into the massive, unrelenting argument that is now defining the early days of Gabriel's professional career, is not simply about whether Dillon Gabriel can play in the NFL. It is about whether Dillon Gabriel should be starting right now. And the reason that debate has become so explosive is because of everything happening around it. The roster construction, the other quarterbacks in the building, the coaching staff's public and private statements, the expectations placed on this team by an ownership group that has invested enormous resources and wants to see results. All of it colliding at once, all of it centering on one decision, one name, one moment that will define the direction of this franchise for years to come. The starter decision, the question of whether Dillon Gabriel gets the first-team reps, whether his name is written on the depth chart at the top, whether the Cleveland Browns are committing to him as their present and their future, is not a simple football question. It never was. In a market like Cleveland, with a fan base like Cleveland's, with a history like Cleveland's, every quarterback decision is a referendum on the entire organization. When the head coach and the front office sit down to talk about who starts, they're not just talking about football. They're talking about what kind of statement they want to make to the city, to the league, to the players in the locker room, and to themselves. And Dillon Gabriel, to his enormous credit, has not made that decision easy by playing poorly or giving anyone a reason to look elsewhere. Reports coming out of Browns practices and preseason activities described a quarterback who was sharp, focused, and commanding. Coaches who worked with him on a daily basis spoke in terms that suggested genuine respect for his football intelligence. The way he absorbed the playbook, the way he communicated with receivers, the way he managed the offense in practice situations, all of it pointed to a player who was not there to sit and learn for years before getting a shot. He came in ready, he came in believing, and he came in performing in ways that made the decision harder rather than easier for a coaching staff that perhaps expected to have more time before the debate got this loud. Because when a rookie quarterback comes in and performs, when he looks like he belongs, when the people watching him every day start saying things out loud that they might have only whispered a few weeks earlier, the media picks it up. The fans pick it up. The former players and analysts who watch practice footage and talk to people inside buildings pick it up. And then it is no longer an internal conversation, it is a national one. Sports radio in Cleveland became consumed by the debate in a way that only Cleveland sports radio can become consumed by a quarterback debate. Every show, every caller, every argument about what this team should do, what this team owes the fan base, what this team believes about its own future. The Gabriel advocates were loud and getting louder, pointing to his practice performance, his college resume, his obvious football intelligence, and asking why a team that needs to find its quarterback of the future would delay the process of finding out if that quarterback is already in the building. The skeptics were equally loud, raising the same concerns they had raised since draft day, arguing that protecting a young quarterback means not throwing him into a difficult situation before he is ready, suggesting that patience is a virtue and that a bad start to a career can damage a player's development in ways that are hard to recover from. This debate spilled onto social media with a velocity that surprised even people who follow these things closely. Dillon Gabriel had built a genuine following during his college career, fans who had watched him play for years, who felt a personal connection to his journey, who believed deeply in his ability and wanted to see him succeed. When the starter debate ignited, those fans did not stay quiet. They showed up in every comment section, every reply thread, every YouTube video about the Browns. They made noise. Real noise, the kind of noise that NFL organizations hear even when they are trying not to listen. Former NFL quarterbacks weighed in.
Some argued that Gabriel's processing ability and decision-making were precisely the traits that translate to the professional level, regardless of the coaching staff found itself in the position that no coaching staff wants to be in, caught between what they feel is the right football decision and the enormity of the external pressure being applied from every direction. Head coaches in the NFL learned very quickly that roster decisions do not exist in a vacuum. The decision about who starts at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns is not made in a quiet room by people considering only football factors. It is made in a world where every piece of information leaks, where every signal is analyzed, where every word spoken in a press conference is examined for what it reveals about the thinking happening behind closed doors. And in Cleveland in 2025, with Dillon Gabriel performing the way he was performing, and with the fan base demanding answers, that pressure was extraordinary. There was also the broader NFL context to consider. The 2025 quarterback class had generated enormous attention, not just for Gabriel but for the entire group, and the decisions made by teams about how to use and develop these players were being watched closely by everyone in the league. How a franchise handles a talented young quarterback in his first year, whether they commit to him, whether they protect him, whether they give him the opportunity to grow through the inevitable struggles of the transition to the professional game, says a great deal about the culture of that organization. It sends a message to future free agents and future draft prospects about what kind of environment they would be entering. It shapes the perception of the franchise for years. The players in the Browns' locker room were paying attention too. Veteran players on that roster had seen quarterback controversies before. They knew how a poorly managed situation could fracture a locker room, create factions, undermine the trust that a team needs to function. They also knew that a well-managed transition, handled with transparency, with clear communication, with the team's best interests genuinely at the center, could bring a group together around a shared mission. Which version of this story was being written in Cleveland depended entirely on how the organization managed the next several weeks and months. The starter decision was not just about football. It was about organizational culture. It was about leadership. It was about whether the Cleveland Browns had learned anything from everything that had gone wrong before. Dillon Gabriel, for his part, carried himself through all of this with a composure that caught people off guard. He had grown up in football. He had played under pressure his entire life. He had transferred programs, rebuilt his career in new environments, handled the scrutiny of being a highly decorated college player who was perpetually underestimated by the people writing the rankings and the projections. He knew who he was. He knew what he could do, and he had no interest in the noise. He came to work.
The NFL world was watching. Cleveland was watching. And Dillon Gabriel was doing what Dillon Gabriel has always done, playing football, winning the moment, and waiting for the organization to catch up to what everyone watching already knew. The story of Dillon Gabriel and the Cleveland Browns is still being written. The starter decision that has ignited this massive debate will be made, and when it is made, it will send a message about this franchise, about this player, and about whether Cleveland is finally ready to commit to a future instead of mourning its past. Whatever happens next, one thing is already certain. Dillon Gabriel has arrived. He has made his case. He has sparked a conversation that the entire NFL is now part of. And in a city that has waited this long for a reason to believe, that is not a small thing. That is everything. Ending plus disclaimer. This video is based on publicly available reports, sports media coverage, NFL draft analysis, practice reports, and ongoing developments as of the time of production. Some details regarding internal team discussions and organizational decisions are based on industry reporting and insider accounts and have not been independently verified. This content is intended for informational and entertainment purposes and does not represent the official positions of the Cleveland Browns, the NFL, or any individual mentioned.